Ishan had always been known as the calm one. Teachers trusted him. Friends came to him for advice. He never raised his voice, never stormed out of a room, never let things get to him, at least on the outside. But inside was a different story. He felt everything, deeply: disappointment, anger, pressure, the weight of always being in control. He had learned to bury emotions, not manage them, and like any pressure that's sealed tight, eventually, it cracked. One afternoon, after losing a debate competition he thought he had prepared perfectly for, Ishan snapped. Not loudly, not violently, but something broke in him. He walked out of school, sat under a tree across the field, and didn't say a word for an hour. That's where Mr. Varma found him, the school's old history teacher, retired but still visiting sometimes. He didn't ask, "What's wrong?" He didn't give advice. He just sat beside Ishan and said, "You know, I once threw a chair in a classroom." Ishan blinked. Mr. Varma smiled. "Not proud of it, but I learned something that day. Anger isn't weakness. Unseen anger is." Ishan looked away. He didn't want to talk, but he didn't move either. And that silence was the beginning. The next day, Ishan returned to the same tree after school. Mr. Varma was already there, sipping tea from a small steel cup. He didn't look surprised to see him. They sat in silence for a while. The wind moved gently through the leaves above them. Then Mr. Varma said, "Most people think strength means staying calm all the time, but strength is knowing when you're not." Ishan stared at the ground. "I don't want to lose control," he said finally. Mr. Varma nodded. "But controlling emotions doesn't mean denying them. It means understanding them before they decide your actions." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it over. It was a diagram, simple, hand-drawn. A match, a spark, a flame, a fire. "At what point do you think the damage starts?" he asked. Ishan pointed at the fire. "No," Mr. Varma said gently. "It starts at the spark, if we ignore it." That night, Ishan lay in bed, thinking about the last few weeks. The things he didn't say, the things he pretended didn't hurt, and he realized he wasn't calm. He was full of everything he hadn't let himself feel. Over the next few days, Ishan started paying attention, not just to what he felt, but when. He noticed how his chest tightened during group discussions, how disappointment showed up as silence, how frustration sat quietly in his shoulders, waiting for an exit. He didn't try to fix everything. He just observed, without judgment. One afternoon, Mr. Varma gave him a small notebook. "This is your mirror," he said, "but for the inside." Ishan started writing in it, not full pages, just fragments, words, phrases, things he couldn't say out loud but needed to see. "I feel like I'm always performing. Sometimes I want to scream but don't know why. Being strong feels like being alone." And with every line, the pressure began to loosen, not disappear, just soften. One day after class, a younger student bumped into him and mumbled an apology. Usually, Ishan would have smiled and said, "It's okay." But this time, he paused. He realized he was about to repeat a script, a calm mask, but instead, he took a breath and just said nothing. Not cold, not angry, just present. That night, he wrote in the notebook, "Not everything needs to be managed. Some things just need space." One evening, Ishan found Mr. Varma sitting beneath the tree with 2 cups of tea. They didn't talk much at first, just sat quietly, letting the stillness do its work. Then Mr. Varma asked, "Do you remember the last time you allowed yourself to feel something all the way through, without fixing it, without hiding it?" Ishan thought for a long moment. "No," he said. "I always move past it. Fast." Mr. Varma nodded slowly. "That's what most of us are taught. To move on, not through." He picked up a handful of dried leaves and let them fall from his hand. Every time we skip a feeling, we store it. And one day, all those stored pieces become too heavy to carry. Ishan didn't reply, but something inside him opened. That night, instead of escaping into distractions, he sat on his bed and allowed himself to feel everything. The disappointment, the pressure to always be composed, the grief of never showing grief. He didn't cry. He didn't collapse. He just felt. And for once, it didn't break him. It steadied him. Because strength, he was beginning to realize, wasn't about being unaffected. It was about being honest, with yourself first. The following week, there was a heated discussion in class. A group project had fallen apart, and fingers were being pointed. Ishan sat quietly at first, listening. Normally, he would step in to mediate, calm everyone down, fix things, hold the peace. But this time, he didn't rush. He felt the heat rising in his chest, the urge to defend himself, the frustration building. But instead of reacting, he paused. He took a slow breath and said, "I'm upset too. But let's not tear each other down. We're all trying." The room went quiet. No one clapped. No one praised him. But something shifted. Later, a classmate walked up and said, "You always stay so calm. I don't know how you do it." Ishan replied, "I'm not always calm. I just don't let my first reaction be the only one." That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Today, I didn't hide what I felt. I also didn't hand it to someone else to carry." He realized now, controlling your emotions didn't mean silencing them. It meant listening to them, learning their names, and then choosing how to respond, consciously, kindly, with clarity. And that kind of control, that was real strength. A few days later, Ishan was back under the same tree, notebook in hand, pen uncapped, breeze light, mind still. He flipped through the pages he had filled, lines of doubt, moments of anger, soft realizations. He didn't feel ashamed of any of it. In fact, he felt proud, not because he had overcome anything, but because he had finally learned to stay with what was real. Mr. Varma joined him, sitting without a word. After a while, Ishan asked, "So, does it ever get easy?" The old man smiled. No, but it gets familiar. And when something is familiar, it stops being scary. Ishan nodded. That evening, as he walked home, he didn't feel like someone who had mastered his emotions. He felt like someone who was walking with them, not against them. And that made all the difference. He wasn't suppressing. He wasn't avoiding. He was listening, responding, growing. And now, when the world pushed him, he didn't collapse. He stood, not because nothing shook him, but because he had roots. Quiet ones, deep ones, built through honesty, patience, and practice.